The walls of the sanctuary. St. John the Philosopher here. Immigration has been a particularly hot topic over the last decade or so, and that heat has risen to nuclear levels with the most recent presidential campaign and the election of an administration that's promised to be tough on border security. Opposition has been fierce, and in many ways the public has been forcibly divided into two warring camps that couldn't be further from one another. Figured I've had the channel for a little while now. Time to make everyone angry. I'm going to skip the obligatory statement about this being a nation of immigrants, the main reason being that it's largely a disingenuous concession. I mean, just because it's an obvious and indisputable historical fact doesn't mean that anything that follows is equally trustworthy. So let's set that aside. The main conflict here is between two equally valid concerns. Both are part and parcel to American cultural aspirations, and both are actually bigger than any individual issue. They are justice and charity. These two virtues are equally essential to having a good nation. I dare say you need them in equal measure to make a good person. So it's important that before we get into any nitty-gritty on immigration per se, we look at the deeper subject behind the controversy. Justice is exclusively concerned with judging actions against a standard, and the result of that judgment must lead to a consistently applied consequence. This is the meaning behind the popular image of justice personified that we see all around the Western world. In one hand, the scales that weigh a person's behavior against the standard. In the other, the sword representing righteous punishment. The blindfold over her eyes says that nothing but what is on the scale matters to her decision. Make no mistake, a society without justice is not one you want to live in. However, it's a simple fact of the nature of justice that it can appear cruel. It surely tugs at the heartstrings to see a father separated from his child, but if the man's a criminal, justice has its own demands. This is where the other side of the equation is necessary. Charity is the counterbalance to justice, the velvet glove over the iron hand, if you will. As such, charity isn't concerned with the same things as justice. Charity wants to take care of people, regardless of circumstance, and therefore demands sacrifice for the sake of the least of these. It's what makes us want to take care of the child of that criminal, as it should. Where justice is blind, Charity's eyes are wide open and filled with tears of compassion because of what she sees. The two sides of the immigration argument have chosen one of those hills to die on. The justice camp is upset by the blatant disregard for law and order when it comes to illegal immigration. Unlawful border crossings, the smuggling of contraband, identity theft, forgery, fraud, tax evasion, and entitlement abuse are among the many crimes regularly associated with illegal immigration. That these crimes go unpunished is bad enough for the civic-minded individual. Their righteous anger is further inflamed by the fact that a small but virulent element of the illegal immigrant population are also violent and destructive. And to top it all off, instead of being united in a quest to bring order to such a chaotic system, there are powerful forces in American government and society busy making it easier for the chaos to grow. It's out of the frustration of this lawlessness that you get calls for harsher punishments, non-negotiable deportations, and a wall. And if you were honest, you couldn't blame them. The charity camp sees only human need. The people overstaying their visas or sneaking across the border are, more often than not, cut from the same cloth as the historical immigrants we read about in school, full of hope for a better life in the land of opportunity. The charity-minded sees the best in them, family-oriented, hardworking people looking to carve out a piece of the American dream with their own two hands. Having grown up among Hispanic and Jamaican immigrants, I've seen it firsthand.
When I was your age, I was a maintenance man, a carpenter, a cab driver, a cook, a hospital orderly, a security guard, a tour guide, a fish cleaner, and an Amway distributor all in the same day. I didn't even have time to almost make you, boy.
It's like a documentary. The charity folk don't care about whether the paperwork was filed, or the fees paid, or the proper documentation issued. They just see the people, which is why you can't seem to divorce the concept of illegal immigration from legal immigration when discussing it with them. Legal or illegal status doesn't matter to them when they're looking at families in need. And if you were honest, you'd understand why they're so passionate.
Oh, you must be hungry. Here you go.
You'd better be able to pay for that.
Pay?
No one steals from my cart.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I don't have any money.
Thief!
Oh, please. If you let me go to the palace, I can get some from the Sultan.
Do you know what the penalty is for stealing?
I first saw this scene from Aladdin as a teenager. I remember wanting the starving kid to get something to eat. And I didn't want Jasmine to lose her hand. But I distinctly remember thinking, but what about the shopkeeper? Sure, he seemed a bit surly, what with the sword brandishing and all, but they were stealing from him. For all we know, he could have a mess of kids at home depending on what few drachma he could scrape together to pay rent, or to pay for a healer to visit sick little Ahmed. This guy could be one bad day of sales away from joining that kid on the street. His whole life and that of his family hanging by a thread. And it could all be a matter of a few unsold apples and a few coins that leads them all into destitution.
Come back here, you little thieves!
Yeah, I know. I was a weird kid. The point is, we need to be capable of considering more than one aspect to such a complex question as immigration. What we're missing here is balance.
Better learn balance. Balance is key. Balance good, karate good, everything good. Balance bad, better pack up, go home. Understand?
Justice has to remain blind, yes, but justice that doesn't place the nuances of human concerns on the scale can easily devolve into true cruelty, and not just the appearance of it. Charity, unconcerned with justice, does real harm by denying people the protection of those laws it chooses to ignore. And in its attempt to undo inequalities, it simply creates new ones. Justice without charity doesn't care that an illegal immigrant brought here as a child knows no other culture but America. The law is the law, so over the wall they go.
Hey, how's your girl, man?
She left me.
Oh.
Yeah, my mom died too. And my dad got deported. But I got the van.
It's nice.
Yeah, right?
Charity without justice doesn't care how many people are hurt by illegal immigrant criminals. Because hey, this is a sanctuary city. That's just the price we have to pay. Justice and charity in conflict will destroy each other and ultimately betray their own purposes. Balance is the key to a wise solution. Wisdom is the ability to bring about the greatest benefit for the most people in the best way possible. God gave us a glimpse of His infinite wisdom with the plan of salvation through the cross, where His righteousness and justice were perfectly balanced against His love and mercy. If you don't understand or know what I'm talking about here, stay tuned for a future video on it. In seeking to emulate that perfect wisdom, we need to seek that kind of balance. So in the interest of stimulating discussion, I'm going to make a few suggestions to that end. First, we have to get a handle on who's coming and going across our borders. There's no government on earth that can claim true sovereignty as a nation with an uncontrolled border, which is why most countries have more strict immigration laws than we do. Seriously. Further, we tried putting security as an afterthought once before in 1986. Back then there were about 3 million illegal aliens in the country who were given amnesty, and nothing was really done about border security. Today, there's almost 3 times that amount. Security first this time. Yeah. Now just from a practical sense, that security will necessarily come in many forms, one of which may very well include a wall. Sure, unless you've got some Star Trek level force field stuff going on, it's not an absolute solution on its own, but coupled with surveillance drones, advanced sensors, quick response vehicles, and an increased border patrol presence, it's sure to be far more effective than what we have now, which is to say, not much.
What happened? The people are crossing. Almost on cue, a group of asylum seekers, migrants not from Mexico, jumped over the existing fence to turn themselves in to border agents on horseback.
This is a reality of everyday border enforcement. The United States is still the draw, the ultimate draw for people that have dire situations where they're at. We're going to continue to witness this. It plays out on a regular basis for us.
And it did just here, just now.
Just now, yeah.
Second, we have to shore up the integrity of the voting system to make sure only citizens can vote. I know, it doesn't sound like it's all that related, but I promise, it is. Bear with me.
Who cares about this stupid election?
Lastly, and here's where it gets a little complicated, we have to deal with the 11 million or so illegals currently within our borders. I propose 3 resolution tiers. For felons and people in the country less than a certain amount of time, immediate deportation. No ifs, ands, or buts. Sorry, not sorry.
Fired!
At the opposite end of the spectrum, for those who have lived and worked here for many years, planted roots in their communities, and have unrelated citizens willing to sponsor them, the ability to achieve legal status.
I like to be in America, okay by me in America, everything free in America.
For a small fee in America.
Their permanent residency would require payment of a fine that includes back taxes, passing a civics test, and forfeiture of the opportunity to ever become a full voting citizen. In that way, we satisfy our charitable instincts while not abandoning our principles of justice. There are millions of immigrants every year that complete the long and expensive road to citizenship. Simply handing such a hard-fought accomplishment to those that cheated the system would be a betrayal to every legal immigrant in the country. It's actually this portion of the idea that requires that more robust voting system I mentioned earlier. We need to be sure that these new permanent residents never abuse their ability to get valid government IDs and the like to cast fraudulent ballots. Voter fraud is an injustice against all of us, and this part of the plan falls apart if the voting booth isn't adequately protected. The final tier would be probationary residency.
You're on double secret probation.
Double secret probation, sir?
For those that don't exactly fall neatly into either end of the spectrum, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency would evaluate people on a case-by-case basis over a set period of time to gain more clarity on whether they belong in the permanent resident group or the deportation group. This would provide the flexibility to make practical decisions without falling prey to the stupidity that always seems to come out of zero-tolerance type of policies. This is only food for thought, but I think it's far better than the current ideas being thrown around. A wall may serve as a successful barrier against outside forces, but if the people inside aren't cared for, what good is it? A sanctuary city may promise refuge, but without a wall, it's exposed to all sorts of dangers and is destined to tear itself apart. So what say you? What do you think about this video, and what do you think about my immigration plan? Am I onto something, or does it sound like I'm on something? Let me know in the comments. Well, I think we've had enough for today. This is St. John the Philosopher. Goodbye, God bless, and I'll see you in another video.